I tested it, it was not optimal. And that's another difference, that functional medicine doctors, they look at optimal levels versus they're very different.
Yeah, just passing the grade.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, normal compared to what, right? Not to the optimal. And why not? I don't get it.
I know. I don't want to be just okay. I want to be optimal.
Yeah, like why are you comparing this to like the lowest like the worst case scenario?
Absolutely. Yes. The standards, like, do you want to, just as you said, do you want to just be okay, or do you want to have this vibrant health and energy to be able to do all the things and travel, enjoy life, and function at your full capacity, not just getting by?
Welcome to Functional Moms Podcast, lifestyle medicine for women over 40. Let's age on our own terms. This episode is for you if you're curious about what it means to have inflammation in the body. As we age, we become more inflamed with subtle symptoms. This is our body talking to us, but we're not always listening.
Today, we welcome Nataliya Moon. She is a functional medicine certified health coach, helping people take their health through lifestyle change. Nataliya is going to share common signs of inflammation in people over 40 and what you can do to age better. Nataliya is a married mom with a 6-year-old daughter.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Nataliya. We are really curious about this topic of inflammation, and we wanted to start off by just asking you, what is inflammation?
Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. And I'm very excited about having this conversation with you ladies. So I wanted to start first about redefining, inflammation that most people are familiar with. Maybe people know about, you injure your elbow, or, you break your leg, and that inflammation that we're familiar with is swelling, redness. Perhaps people will have fever. So that's what we kind of like our common knowledge of inflammation. It's usually a result of something that has happened, a disease. But in functional medicine, we see inflammation as a root cause. It's more of a hidden inflammation, chronic low-grade inflammation that is happening over a long period of time. And that's really at the root cause of many chronic diseases. And it can over time become dangerous because it can result in all those diseases that we associate with aging. When you age, usually they tell you go in to see the doctor, so that because you become at risk for heart disease, for cancer, and variety of issues. And so we can dive in and discuss why is it actually happening in the body. And so first of all, there are natural processes of aging that we're all familiar with. They're just happening naturally. For example, all cells, with the exception of red blood cells, they have mitochondria. They're kind of like the tiny, perhaps you've heard the definition, the powerhouse of the cell. That's like when a lot of people hear mitochondria, they hear powerhouse of the cell. That's what you think about energy, you think about mitochondria. And all the cells in the body, all the major organs in the body, they need energy to function. And as we age, mitochondria, they're naturally already declining. So if you think about the energy, like I have a 6-year-old and she has endless energy. And as we age, our energy is declining, right? And so, but what was happening and what is happening right now is that what is normal in regards of aging has changed. So we really have accelerated rate of aging right now. And it's not necessarily visual in the aesthetics because, and I would dare to say that we're kind of a superficial society. We focus so much on like visuals, and we've learned how to sort of say mask it. Like you can go and you can have some procedures done to you to look younger, but it's not going to change the way you feel. It's not going to change your quality of life because you will still be dealing with symptoms. And let's actually define those symptoms. So perhaps the biggest one, and the one that you can catch on at the early stage of development of chronic disease, and is fatigue, just feeling tired, just not having that energy. And then there are sleep issues, skin issues, mood disorders, irritability, hormonal imbalances. So like any shifts with periods, maybe having heavier periods, all the skin issues, digestive issues, such as constipation or bloating or gas, joint pain. And so all of those kind of like, they can tie in together. If I may share my personal story, just like for a couple of minutes, so that maybe people can relate to what I dealt with. And actually, that's the reason why I came to functional medicine, is that I was dealing with that kind of like set of symptoms. I was very tired. I would wake up tired, and then I would be very irritable. I had a toddler on my hands back then, and I would just struggle just taking care of her, just reading her a bedtime story. I would become irritable, and then I would feel guilty about it. And, just like even going grocery shopping or cooking was kind of like a big task for me. So I just felt like I did not have that energy in the gas in the tank to just function. And I was very frustrated with that. I was irritable, mood swings. Then I started not sleeping well. Also, I had digestive issues. So kind of like a combination of a lot of things. And I went to the conventional doctors. I asked for lab tests, solutions, answers. I was offered antidepressants. That all I walked away with. And it was very frustrating for me. And so the story that I told myself is that I said, well, perhaps that's just what it is being my age. Perhaps that's what it is being a mom. And I just have to embrace it and roll with it. And, you just put makeup on, you put a smile on, and you keep rolling. And that was until I started hearing other people sharing their stories and saying that that was not normal. I should not embrace that. I should actually, and there are some solutions that I could do to change. And that's eventually what led me to functional medicine. And I think that's why it's important. What you're doing here is raising awareness. Perhaps somebody will hear also story and realize that we define as normal is very subjective, right? And it's changing over time.
Yeah, and I think all those signs that you're talking about, they're kind of subtle, right? Yeah, you could be tired because you have a toddler. That could be normal. So it's kind of hard for people, I think, to navigate, well, is what I'm experiencing really normal, or is there something else going on here? And could it be that inflammation that you talked about that's so subtle that we just don't even realize? We're kind of just living our life and going ahead and not realizing that maybe something could be wrong. So I guess what really led you to look beyond just, help for symptoms in conventional medicine?
You're absolutely right that it's very subtle. And because it happens like teeny tiny time, like at a time, like it's a fraction of a degree, right? Deviation over time, that like sometimes you don't even realize that there could be something else. In fact, like it wasn't until I started feeling better and I look back and I thought, wow, I don't know how I even functioned that way. But for me, it was having a breaking point. And because my symptoms, they progressively got worse. And so my breaking point was when I started having insomnias. And so my sleep got really disrupted, and it affected my relationships in my family, because like all of a sudden, like it affected my mental health, and I just couldn't function, and I just felt broken. And at some point I had this like awakening moment, and I just said, I don't want to continue living that way. It's not a quality of life that I want to live. And I did not feel like I was living to the fullest, that my body was holding me back. I wasn't able to enjoy my relationship, time with my daughter that was growing. Even when we would go traveling to beautiful places, I felt like I wasn't able to even enjoy those things. And so at that point, breaking point, I just said, I would do anything to change this. I will roll up my sleeves and I will do the hard work to change this.
Yeah, I think you hear that so often. People just feel so bad that they're willing to do anything to feel better. And interesting too about your story is just that you said that, it was so subtle, and then you didn't really realize until you started to feel better how bad you felt. And that's another common thing I think you hear, right? You have nothing to compare it to when you're in it, but when you actually get out of it and look back, it's so different.
I'm really curious when you said that I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and I'm ready to do the work, whatever it is. So, what was it that you ended up doing?
At that point, I've already chased a lot of supplements and treatments and different things, did lab tests. But the answers that I found is that I really had to work on those light, modifiable lifestyle and behavior changes. I really had to work on my everyday life. And, for me, I considered that I was somewhat a healthy eater. I wasn't necessarily eating standard American diet. I'm originally from Europe, so, food and whole foods like were always important for me. But even when I started paying attention, and that's often, and you probably do that too with your clients, and I did that, food journaling. So when you
Yeah.
actually pull out like lens and you start, reading label and paying attention, and you will see what ingredients you're consuming, even on those healthy foods, what we think is healthy, because there are added sugars essentially everywhere, or hidden inflammatory oils, or like just a long list of ingredients that you don't even know what they are. And so just focusing and working on my nutrition. And then I had other bad habits, because as a young mom and also not having energy, all I wanted to do is just kind of like sit on a couch and zone out on my phone, or binge watch Netflix Netflix. I thought that was self-care. I thought like, oh, well, I want some time for myself and do that. And, those bad habits were definitely affecting my health. And so I had kind of like an awakening. I have to work and shift all these different things.
And interesting that you didn't have a diagnosis then. It wasn't like you have this, you need to, do these supplements and this protocol or something. It was really the lifestyle change. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that actually brings up another good conversation is that because on record, I would be very healthy because, I would go to conventional doctor that would run the set of labs and it would come back looking normal. Maybe like with like my ferritin would be slightly lower, like, but nothing that would be just like, oh, well, you're just fine. And you walk away feeling that it was in your head. And that's how I felt. And that's the lie that I told myself that perhaps it was in my head for a long time because they're the experts. They went to school. They should know better. What do I know? And that's really a dangerous thing because, I would have a diagnosis probably if I did not change anything down the road because all of this is happening over a prolonged period of time, right? But if we're able to catch on this early symptom, we're able to really change things. And I would say that energy and insulin resistance is definitely a big concern. And I'm sure you had people that talked about, I think I watched some of your podcasts about insulin resistance and that it's really an epidemic and it's happening in a big spectrum, right? And so mine, when I tested it, and conventional doctors, they just don't test for fasting insulin. It's not a routine test, but it's very inexpensive and it's very easy to do. And so when I tested it, it was not optimal. And that's another difference that functional medicine doctors, they look at optimal levels versus they're very different.
Yes.
Yeah, just passing the grade.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, normal compared to what, right? Not to the optimal.
Yeah.
And why not? I don't get it. Like,
I know. I don't want to be just okay. I want to be optimal.
yeah, like why are you comparing this to like the lowest like the worst case scenario?
Absolutely. Yes. The standards, like, do you want to, just as you said, do you want to just be okay? Or do you want to have this vibrant health and energy to be able to do all the things and travel, enjoy life and function at your full capacity, not just getting by exactly where I was? And I would also say that it's a low hanging fruit because this is very easy. Well, it's hard at first, but like within like few weeks, you are able to feel so much better. You start eating correctly and your cravings go away and you start having energy just by implementing a few changes.
Yeah, tell us more.
Lifestyle as a medicine. I just want to say that. And I also want to say, because Kristen always says that, she's like, maybe because sometimes like it can be like kind of expensive. Like if you were like, an average mom up there, maybe she can't get like a functional medicine doctor or whatever because it's like not mainstream yet or whatever. But Kristen always talks about like, but you can just take lifestyle choices that could make a huge, huge impact and like all the difference. And I just feel like there's such a connection with what you're talking about right now.
It's so true. And the coaching is a great way to go too. If you're really lost, a functional medicine health coach can really help you get on that journey and just work on the lifestyle pieces. Because yeah, at the end of the day, you're probably going to learn more playing around with your lifestyle than you are if you get expensive lab tests and take all these supplements. You're going to get a lot further if you just focus on your nutrition, your sleep, your movement, your stress, you dial those things in.
That's the baseline to start with. And, I just want to chime in on what you guys are talking about because just yesterday I have a client now. I'm in fitness. And so I have personal training clients that I do fitness programs with. And I work mostly with women that are 40 and over. And one of my clients, we're talking as she's training and I have her program and she's talking about some of her issues but I started noticing they're like lifestyle choice issues, like talking about sleep and, and she's doing dry January and all these types of things. And then, I just said to her, I said, I think it's going to be really beneficial if we do maybe half your session fitness, like just focused on weight training. And then the other half, let's do like health coaching, lifestyle. We can really work through some of these things. And she was like, that's amazing. Like, I definitely want to do that. just having a health coach.
It works all together, right? You can't just have the fitness piece. You have to have it all working together to get that energy that you need and all of that. So that's really great. And I don't want to miss, you mentioned the insulin piece in your story. And I just wanted for people that aren't aware that they could even get that test or what they would do with the results. Can you just explain a little more about how it went?
Yes, so they can just request their conventional doctor and just ask their conventional doctor to order that. Or sometimes if you don't want to go and even deal with that, there are so many labs right now that you can order just online, pay the price through different online companies, and just go to your nearby LabCorp or Quest and just get that test done. And so when looking at insulin, those optimal levels, you really don't want to, like, once it goes above 6, you can have already do some work to optimize it, and you can pay attention to. And we can dive in. Maybe I'll step back and just explain a little bit what happens and how it ties into energy and all the different things. And so the job of insulin, you think of insulin as like delivery guy. So he takes up glucose from the food that we're consuming and delivers it to cells, all the different cells, muscle cells, brain cells, heart cells in the body. Think of it as like firewood for a wood burning stove. And then those mitochondria that I mentioned, the powerhouses that are generating energy for all of our organs to function, they need this fuel sources. So they utilize glucose or fat to produce this energy. And so imagine with our diets, they're so saturated with simple carbohydrates and added sugars. There is a constant influx into bloodstream of this glucose. And so the insulin is constantly trying to get this glucose into cells, but they're saying, oh, we have enough. We can only burn so much. And producing energy in mitochondria is already a stressful process, right? So as we age, there are natural processes of oxidative stress that are happening, and making energy is one of them. So you can't constantly do that. And also as a society, we're constantly snacking, constantly eating all of this. And so insulin resistance happens when the cells are just blocking out. I can't hear insulin. And that communication between insulin and the cells is disrupted. And so what insulin does is another symptom that I did not mention of inflammation is that stubborn fat. And it's usually visceral fat. It's the fat that kind of like goes around the organs. And so it's not necessarily in people that are overweight. You can be skinny fat. So you look normal, but you have that visceral fat around your organ. And so insulin is going to take all this glucose and package it away into storage, which is fat. And so when there is an increase in insulin, and there will be increase in insulin to deal with all the glucose circulating in the blood. So insulin is inflammatory for the body, and the same glucose, high amounts of glucose circulating in the blood is inflammatory and aging for the body. And so that's inflammation that happens. And so in order to reduce it, you need to watch how much glucose, how many simple carbohydrates you're consuming. And so that's why people have such great success when they're going on more ketogenic diets or modified ketogenic diet, because they're just reducing how much glucose they're consuming from the simple carbohydrates and added sugars.
Yeah, I actually have to share, I did the continuous glucose monitor to see how I reacted to different foods, and it was fascinating. If I ate an apple without peanut butter or some kind of cheese or fat or something with it, my sugar would spike very high, and that would throw me out of range. So it's really fascinating if people have the opportunity to do that. And sometimes doctors will prescribe it for people. It depends on what your doctor's like, but it's really an eye-opening experience. And so I'm curious how so you said your fasting insulin number was not optimal. And so then what did you do to get it optimal?
And thank you for sharing about the continuous glucose monitor. So I use it too, and I think it's a wonderful tool, as you said, if somebody can afford it, because for now it is still pricey to use it. But what I do usually at breakfast, when starting the day with protein, healthy fats, and fiber, and usually that's my highest intake of protein in a day. And then when I started, I was still snacking, because you have this blood sugar that is going up and down. And a lot of my clients, they do the same. They just still have to shift to healthier snacks. So if they would eat like an apple, they would eat it with some kind of fats and proteins, let's say some nuts. combine that. But over time, I do that and my clients do. They're just sticking to 3 balanced meals in a day. And once they do that, they don't feel hungry over time. They eat their breakfast and they can just go until lunch. And from lunch, they can go until dinner. And I usually say, if you want a snack, if you become hungry, it's likely that you were not eating enough protein or healthy fats during that meal. So go back, see how much you were consuming, if it was balanced enough, if you had enough fiber also to curb that spike. And so that's kind of like what the main approach for making insulin more sensitive and balancing out blood sugar. And other things are just walking after meals, so movement. And that's a simple one. You can just walk around the house, carry laundry, I don't know, clean, vacuum, or go on a walk, go check your mailbox, things like that. Resistance training, again, engaging your muscles. So that's important, but that comes kind of like down the road. Once people start having more energy, they're able to increase. I usually say just do a step up from what you're doing now. If you're a couch potato and you had no energy and you were just sitting on the couch, walking, it would be a step up. And then you go from there, step up and step up. What can you do? Because overdoing it can be a risk too. Like you can easily overdo with even good things.
Yeah, I like that. And I love how health coaching is always meeting the person where they're at, because it's so true. We're all at different points, no matter, what our journey looks like. We're all ready for different things at different times. That's a great approach.
Yes. And another thing I wanted to add, so insulin resistance and imbalanced blood sugar doesn't only happen from food, because maybe some listeners would think like, well, I'm actually not eating that bad. Some people would say like, I don't drink soda, like I'm not like eating fast food or cookies or whatever. And that was kind of like my case. That's something that you mentioned from continuous glucose monitor, is that I would spike even with complex carbohydrates when, well, also like, or different foods. So it's very personalized approach. With functional medicine, we're leaning towards personalized medicine and seeing what is actually happening with your body and what is working for you. My thing actually, as what I discovered, is that there were other things. I was exposed to mold, and so mold affected how my mitochondria was functioning. So my mitochondria kind of like wasn't functioning well because of this other, so to say, offenders. And that caused insulin resistance. So it can happen from the other way, not necessarily from food. And so it can happen from other environmental exposures, such as heavy metals.
How did you know you were exposed to mold?
Well, that could be another story
Okay.
for another podcast, but it's a crazy story. We actually found a mushroom growing in our apartment.
Wow.
And then we had to cut open the wall, and there was mold inside because there was a leak. Because Utah is considered a dry state, so they're saying there are no problems with mold in Utah. Well, leaks can happen anywhere. And it was such a small leak, like a drop at a time, where all wood was decaying. And so mycotoxins, they're extremely damaging for mitochondria. And I just have also specific genetic positions that just make my symptoms just like, go like insomnia and all those things. It was all connected to that exposure. But there are other toxic exposures. I mean, if we live in a modern world, and like it depends what you're using in your house, detergents, cosmetics, everything, it's all affecting our health.
Yeah. That's one of the things though that can also drive you crazy, right? It's like at the same time you have to live, and like, cause it could really like get, it's like you have to watch your back in every second.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. That's why we try to say we don't have an all or nothing mindset about it. You do what you can, you do it in step. And even my story, when I came to functional medicine, I did not change everything overnight. If I had tried to do that, I think I would have quit long ago. So I think it's a process for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I 100% agree with you on that. Yeah. Well, I wanted to add then about other symptoms of aging. And so another one that we did not talk a lot about is gut microbiome. And how that connects to all the symptoms. This is kind of like a recent discovery about gut microbiome, right? So all this bacteria, and we call them, to simplify, we say bad bacteria and good bacteria. So bad bacteria are pathogenic bacteria that can get out of balance balance, and when they get out of balance, they create also inflammation. There can be also leaky gut, inflammation in the gut where we're starting to react to certain foods, right? So people have sensitivities for different foods, such as they're not tolerating gluten or they're not tolerating dairy. Some people can't even tolerate they become sensitive to vegetables, right? So a variety of vegetables, or people have histamine intolerance. And so all these dietary digestive problems that people are experiencing, and they're tying into all the other symptoms. And once people resolve their gut health, balance out their gut microbiome, they resolve often symptoms such as like skin issues or joint pain that seem not to be related to the gut, but they are. And another thing is also, so this beneficial gut bacteria, they're producing what is called postbiotic, short chain fatty acids when they're fed fiber. So when we eat fiber, and that's why fiber is so important, is that we're feeding these good bacteria that are producing postbiotic. Well, postbiotics are important again for mitochondrial health, so energy, so for your brain to function well, for your heart to function well, for your muscles to grow and function, for your liver to function and detox. And so think about that everything in the body is working in symphony and everything is connected. Hormones are connected to all of that too, and which is very important for us women because our hormones change as we age and we start dealing with hormonal imbalances. And so the problem with conventional medicine is like whack-a-mole medicine. You have one
Yeah.
problem, you go to one doctor, another problem, and we're not looking
The
Yes.
connections.
right, the body as a whole, right? We do that in functional medicine. And so that's why in functional medicine, we also start with the gut. And some people there can resolve a lot of issues by first removing those triggering foods for a period of time. Some people do so well removing gluten, and especially gluten products that we have here that are also GMO. They're sprayed with glyphosate, Roundup, that is very inflammatory for mitochondria. And all of a sudden, they're like, wow, my mind is clear, my skin issues resolve, and so on.
It's amazing. Yeah, I gave up gluten about 12 years ago, and I'm not even celiac, but I had a lot of symptoms that were just a lot of gut issues. Like I would be bloated a lot and things like that. And then on top of it, every winter I would get a sinus infection and I had some psoriasis on my skin. Would never have connected those things to my gut health. I would go to the dermatologist for something on my skin. And I think I got like a CAT scan of my sinuses because I thought it was like allergies. And then once I gave up the gluten, it's never again. I never had another sinus infection again. Don't go through winters like that. So it is amazing that the change you can see.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I have a similar experience too. So I am not celiac, but I had similar gluten sensitivity. And once I went off, like I've been dealing with constipation, I think all through my 20s. And so when you think about, so I started, the symptoms that started were like in my 30s. But once I did what we do, the tool is, which is called timeline, which is you go kind of like through your symptoms from your childbirth. And I do that sometimes with my clients, and I was thinking like there was a cascade of events and symptoms that happened before I even started manifesting symptoms that I felt like they're affecting my health. Now I have to do something. But it was like a decade before that even happened. So it doesn't happen overnight. And that's important for people to realize that it takes time. And so to be patient with your body, as you said, it's not all or nothing approach, that it will take time to reverse it. It's baby steps. It can be so overwhelming to think about all the things. But if you can do even small change every day, it will add up.
I love that message.
Wonderful, wonderful. Being mindful of our time, we'd like to ask 2 simple first steps that we can do today to reduce inflammation and age better.
That's a good question. There are so many things, but I would say that the most important thing is to become more in tune with your body. I think that's something that my clients walk away, and I think that's the biggest learning experience that they have, is understanding how their bodies function. So if somebody can do like a food journal or just track their symptoms, not to police it, but just kind of to observe. Think about being a scientist, at home scientist, and you're just observing how your body is reacting to different foods, how your body is reacting to sleep, modifiable factors, right? To stress. Just take note and then decide at what can you change to make your body work more optimally. I do believe that all of us, we can be experts of our own bodies. We don't need other experts to tell us what to do, because there are so many
Yes.
experts online. It can be so confusing. I believe that we can figure out what is best for us and find our own truth. So tracking symptoms, it will be the first one. And the second one, I would say, and that's a low hanging fruit, is the whole food diet. So that can resolve so many things. So if you stick to the foods that are as close to their natural state, that already solves, you will be avoiding added sugars and all those additives. So you will improve your insulin sensitivity, balance out blood sugar, improve your bowel movements. So help your detoxification, help your gut, balance your gut microbiome. So many benefits just by sticking to whole foods. Those two things, that would be my recommendations for me.
Yeah, that sounds very simple. Not really. It takes time, I think. And just checking in with your body is huge. So many of us just aren't doing that, I think. We're just kind of living the day to day and not really checking in with ourselves and how we really feel and how we're reacting to things. So that's huge.
Yeah, I think that combo too of first checking in with your body, like looking, hey, how am I, living after I eat these foods, and just paying attention. And then when you're really focusing now on eating those whole foods, you can actually be aware of those changes as they occur, as you pay more attention to eating more whole foods. And then you're going to obviously see some other foods that you were maybe indulging on a little bit disappear, and you can start really connecting to how you are physically living on the daily, sleeping, etc.
Yes, and as you mentioned, it's not a quick fix. It's a lifelong journey that people are embarking on. It takes time, and there are so many nuances. But I had to find my own truth. Like, I went completely plant-based, and then I had to stop and say, it's not working for me. Let's try something else. And then I brought back quality protein, and for me, it made a difference. So find your own truth, figure out what works for you.
I like how you're mentioning that growth mindset, because it's true. It is a journey, and works for one person might not work for another. So sometimes you have to be that scientist, as you said, and kind of experiment on yourself and really pay attention. So thanks for sharing that. I just want to tell everybody that Nataliya is offering our listeners 20% off her 6-week coaching program. You can connect with her on Instagram. Her handle is Nataliya Moon Coaching, or her website is www.nataliyamoon.com. And we will be sure to link that in our show notes.
Yes, the code will be FMMoms20.
Thanks so much for coming on the show today. We appreciate it. It was great.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated that.
The information provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, curing, treating, or preventing any disease. We are functional medicine certified health coaches and not licensed medical professionals. The opinions and advice of guests are their own and also not considered to be medical advice. Always consult with a healthcare professional when making any healthy lifestyle changes. We would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment or review. Email us at info@functionalmoms.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button.